There's also the reality, too, that happens to churches in any cultural context. And I think when you go back to the one-child policy, there's not always a connection between one's faith and the rest of one's worldview. Sometimes we have worldview blind spots. We have them in the United States as well. A lot of times they are attempts to justify our way of life. Maybe we've come into conflict with our faith, with a particular aspect of our life. And the life movement is something that Protestants and evangelicals in particular had to re-embrace in the history of Christianity. So if you go back, and I'm talking about Protestants and evangelicals in the U.S. right now. So if you go back to the very first followers of Jesus who were taking their instructions from this document, the Didache, about living in a pagan society, it says there very clearly, thou shalt not procure an abortion, thou shalt not commit infanticide. In other words, unborn children and children should be protected. This was unheard of in the Roman Empire, and it made the very first followers of Jesus essentially pro-lifers. You fast forward to the 20th century, there is progressive policies that have been pushing birth control for a really, really long time. And you go into the middle of the 20th century and you have some ambivalence, a good bit of ambivalence from pro-lifers. Roman Catholics tended to be consistent. Really a kind of a quirky knicker-wearing guy named Francis Schaeffer from Switzerland shows up and starts making these connections between faith and culture, and suddenly people are like, "Oh, yeah, wait, what? Huh?" And that's, in many ways, a very, very important chapter in the history of pro-life in America. That didn't happen in China. Schaeffer's influence didn't extend there. The explosive growth of the underground church across China is primarily evangelical in some forms, and there was a long period in which Chinese pastors who have been and should be looked up as heroes every other way, this was not one of their theological concerns, many of them. The one-child policy, forced abortions, and that sort of stuff. And it was kind of a blind spot, right, in their worldview. And so I know that there has been an incredible effort made over there among the pastors in the churches to spread this pro-life message. And it's going to be interesting what that looks like when you have now encouragement of fertility. And, we don't always make those connections that we need to make. And forcing women into childbirth is not something that can be defended as a Christian either, right? So it'll be interesting to see where this lands.